22 November Network, Neopolis Media Group. This is the Lone Gunman Podcast. With your host, Rob Clark, where research comes to shine and myths come to die. Stay tuned. Be right there. What is up, everybody? This is episode number 64, The Darker Side of Camelot, with your host, Rob Clark, otherwise known as Lobster Larry today. Yeah, I'm in pain, people. I am hurting. Ended up going to the pool yesterday and used some of my son's 50 SPF sunscreen that he used last summer, and apparently it degraded and I got burnt really, really badly across my chest and stomach and my shoulders and my arms and my head, and I am hurting. But I'm here for you, people. I'm here for you. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is not a very popular subject among JFK researchers because, the I don't know how to say this. The man himself, is revered among many people and many researchers. From being called the greatest president that ever lived, the last true president we ever had. But there, as there always is, a darker side to the story. And when it comes to the events of November 22nd, 1963, it's quite evident to me, and it's something that I haven't really touched on the show before, and that is the Secret Service. I'm not saying that, they pulled the trigger, that, they allowed things, but you know what? The protection for his trip to Dallas, it just wasn't up to par. It just wasn't. They broke their own protocol. They didn't check tall buildings. They didn't shut windows. They didn't weld down manhole covers. They didn't have people on the ground. They didn't have anybody on the rooftops. They went slower than they were supposed to, of course, because they had to go around the corner on Elm Street. But something's fishy there to me. And I know Vince Palomero has done a lot of work on the Secret Service and their, as Fetzer calls it, complicity in the murder of JFK. But I don't know if it's complicity, if it's implicit complicity, or they were told to be lackluster, or they were just lackluster. They'd been on a somewhat of a long trip. They may have felt safe in Texas, LBJ's home state. There is talk of that the FBI and Secret Service were aware of assassination plots in Dallas. But then you talk to some other people and say that those documents were faked. So, I've also heard reports, that they were out drinking until the wee hours of the morning, drinking some intense stuff at a bar. But the reason I bring it up is because I think everywhere except in the motorcade, the Queen Mary was following pretty close. If you look at pictures and movies from the rest of the motorcade, of which we have a lot of, from Love Field to Elm Street, and there's the cops are riding to the right and left rear of the limousine, providing a somewhat barrier. You have agents standing on the side, two on each side, standing on each side of the Queen Mary, also providing some kind of obstruction to somebody from a high vantage point. And what I never did understand, of course, was, if there was an agent riding on the back, like Clint Hill was there for a little bit. They have those handles on the back of the trunk, and there's a platform on the bumper where the agents can stand, like right behind Jackie and where JFK were. If there were agents stationed there on the limousine at that point, what the hell was the sixth floor shooter in the depository going to do? Because there would have been no way in hell that he could have hit Kennedy. And they didn't have, unless they had a guarantee that wasn't going to happen. And, people that want to put Lee Oswald up in the sixth floor, if he was a lone assassin, he wouldn't have had confirmation from anybody that there would be nobody riding on the bumpers that day, and that he would have a pretty much unobstructed shot, which, is debatable. When you throw into account, the motorcycle police and the guy standing on the Queen Mary, he did, if anybody was shooting from the sixth floor of the depository, they would have had to thread the needle a little bit, to get to Kennedy. It wasn't a straightforward, unobstructed shot. You had a tree there. You had guys standing on the Queen Mary. If you look at the Auction 6, you can see these guys standing there. They're standing right on each side of the Queen Mary. You got the motorcycle cops on each side. They would have had to thread the needle a little bit. It wouldn't have been a difficult shot, but it wouldn't have been just a plain, wide open, unobstructed shot either. And I bring that up to say this. If there was a plot against JFK and the Secret Service were told to, keep their security lax in Dallas for whatever reason, then why would the Secret Service go along with this? Is what I've always thought. They take an oath to protect with their life, whoever they're protecting, be it the president, the first lady, vice president, the vice first lady, former presidents. They are to take a bullet, to save or prevent the killing of, a highly elected official. That's their job. Okay. The other part of their job is to do advance work, to make sure that these high buildings have the windows nailed shut, make sure the manhole covers are welded shut, things of this nature. But that wasn't done in Dallas. And the question then becomes why? Why wasn't it done in Dallas? And why did the Secret Service go along with it? Just because, people tell you things to do, you got to make it up for yourself whether you feel that it's just or right, to go along with it, or you're just as bad and evil as they are. Now, I was listening to a very, very good show today on the murder of Marilyn Monroe, and I can already hear the eyeballs rolling out there, but let me tell you, go listen to the show and go read this book. Okay, I've read a couple books about it in the past, and one of them is called Red Mist, It's a fiction. It's a faction book. It's fact-based fiction about what possibly could have happened to Marilyn Monroe, but it's based on facts. It's just a fictionalized account. And also in the book by Richard Gilbride, Matrix for Assassination, he attempts to tie together the murder of Marilyn Monroe to, from everything from Roswell to the murder of Marilyn Monroe to the murder of JFK to the murder of RFK, and basically find common threads. And he did quite good at it. So this wasn't my first foray into this kind of thinking, but again, in the forums and in the groups, it's not a very favorable topic, because there's a lot of just blind Kennedy lovers out there who thought this dude walks on water and that's it. He can never do no harm, no wrong, no foul. But when you take those blinders off and you take a look at the times, okay, and I'm sure his whole life Kennedy was a womanizer, a chick magnet. Like he just had this air about him, and he's a good-looking dude. He's always well off. Come from well-to-do family. The Blue Bloods, the New England Blue Bloods. He's a Catholic guy, and women just flocked to him. They were entranced by him. They were mesmerized by him. They wanted to be around him, and it was no different for people like Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, Mimi Alfer, Mary Meyer, and there's a bunch of other ones. I can't sit here and name you all of his trysts. It goes from secretaries in the White House to movie stars to German spies. But what concerned me when I heard the show today, and it's the Opperman Report by Ed Opperman. He does a great job on his show, and he had these guys on that wrote a book called "The Murder of Marilyn Monroe: Case Closed," and it has a lot of new information in it. They name the woman in the polka dot dress. At RFK's murder, he puts I think 3 different CIA people at the ambassador. This fellow who did the kill shot on RFK, the Medallion Man. He implicates, of course, Thane Eugene Caesar with 2 shots to the armpit, 1 missing, and of course Sirhan being the distraction shots up front. With this Medallion guy swinging into the last second with a shot to the head, and he had 2 shots, one missed, 1 hit. These guys, they have pictures and documents in their book, first-hand eyewitness accounts, interviews with people that had never been interviewed before concerning Marilyn Monroe's murder, and they put together a very good case that Bobby Kennedy was behind her murder. A very good case. In fact, I walk away convinced of it. Excuse me. And what this means, okay, it means a lot of things, but Marilyn was sleeping with JFK, but she was also sleeping with RFK, and she was more fixated on RFK. I think he was feeding her lines like he was going to leave Ethel and marry her, and he wanted to be with her and this and that, and things started to get out of hand. Marilyn was being surveilled by the FBI. Her house and phone were tapped and wired and bugged. You got trysts going on at Peter Lawford's house where he was videotaping. He said he had a videotape of JFK and Marilyn Monroe having sex. Just all kinds of stuff was happening. All kinds of stuff was going down. And then the FBI would have a document stating that Marilyn was seen, entering this hotel with this person, like she might have been passing along state secrets. Pertinent information. This is a very, very hairy time back then with the Cuban Missile Crisis, of course, and the Bay of Pigs and everything else going on. In addition to JFK trying to be a good president. And but imagine for a second, if you're a Secret Service agent, okay, you're sworn to lay down your life for this man, this great man, the greatest man in the country. Okay, but in the meantime, you know that this great man is cheating very much, I might add, and often on his wife and his family. He's got 2 kids, and almost 3. So, it probably sickens them just a little bit to think that everybody reveres this man so much, as this great guy, this great president. And, in the meantime, he's diddling everything that walks. And, I'm sure Jackie Kennedy was, a sweet, sweet lady. And maybe she knew what was going on. Maybe she didn't. Maybe that was part of the deal. You know how things were different back then, hey, you want to be the first lady? Well, here's what it's going to entail. I'm going to do my thing. You can do your thing. But when needed, we're a family. We're going to be seen in public together. We're going to be a family unit, And back then, the press didn't report on any of this stuff like they do now. They'll dime you out in a heartbeat now. They see you walking out of somebody's house. But back then, it was different. They didn't report, all these trysts. They didn't follow, the president and the attorney general around the United States, at all times to see what they were doing. Now, the president can't fart without somebody knowing about it in Zimbabwe 5 minutes later. But back then, it was a lot different. And, as long as he put on a pretty public face with his pretty little public family, everything was okay. But maybe there was just a little bit of resentment there, okay, from these Secret Service guys who thought, man, they're going from old Dwight D. Eisenhower, this great general, to, this pretty boy, playboy, womanizing, supposed family man who wasn't really, but he wasn't, but he was doing all this other stuff behind closed doors and possibly experimenting with LSD and marijuana and like I said, his brother being involved in the murder of Marilyn Monroe, and if you go listen to the show, and I'll put a link up for it over at tlgpodcast.com. And I think I'm going to buy their book, too, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. They said, I want to see the actual documents, and I want to see the photographs and stuff, and where they go into a lot more detail on things. But, I walk away from hearing that show convinced Bobby Kennedy had Marilyn Monroe murdered. No way around it. She was threatening to expose, these affairs, and man, they couldn't have that. Not back then, Marilyn was spiteful. She wasn't getting what she wanted. She was being rebuffed, and, she couldn't believe what was happening, and, she was angry. And, these guys, and of course, Marilyn was diddling a whole lot of people back then, she was banging JFK, RFK, her psychologist, who arrived on the scene, who was called to the scene, Joe DiMaggio, these, just a lot of people. There's even an allegation in there where at the Cal Neva Ranch, about, I think it was a week or two before she died, this is where Frank Sinatra lives, there was a couple of mob guys there who ended up drugging her and raping her. And one of them was Johnny Roselli. Okay? So, it wasn't all happy, fun times for Marilyn. When you're a woman, certain things are power. Okay? You hold a lot of power over a man if you are a beautiful, and famous person. You can have anything you want. You can have any man you want. You can bed any man you want, and she did. Okay? So, when she was getting rebuffed from Bobby and Jack and things were about to hit the fan, and I don't even, everybody says, oh no, JFK would have had a second term. I think some of this stuff would have leaked from these FBI buggings, and because they had audio of their pillow talk and their actual sex, and if any of this would have leaked out, before Kennedy, would get reelected, that would do him in. It would have finished him. So this, the second coming of Camelot was a farce. Okay? We find out later that, Jackie was likely seeing someone else on the side, before she moved on to, the Onassis. She was likely seeing him while her and JFK were still together. But, for on the front, on the face, for the public to see, they're a happy little family. But deep inside, they both know what the deal is, and it's got to be hard for a woman like Jackie to have to deal with being his trophy wife, and knowing that, he's running around and banging all these hot young chicks and, but oh no, he loves her, it's so, even there's a document out there that CIA declassified document. I don't even know if it's real or not. You run into these things, but the authors seem to think that it was real, that the CIA was hip to the fact that Marilyn was going to go public and that she had a diary of secrets, supposedly told to her by JFK and RFK, of different things. And, not sure how worried they were about it, but I guarantee RFK was worried about it. So, there's a lot more to this than meets the eye when it comes to JFK. I mean, I don't even know when the guy slept. You know what I'm saying? He had a lot on his plate just being president, and he had to keep up with his family. He had to keep up with engagements. He had to have this secret life where he was running around doing all this other stuff. So I don't even know when the guy slept. But, and I don't dispute the fact that, that he was a great president. I just dispute the fact that he was a great person. Good people, even if that's, you guys got to remember, with money and power come privileges and benefits. Okay. And, with the majority of us not being in that company, in that club, we just don't understand. These guys feel they're entitled to certain things, and, they take what they want. They've always gotten what they wanted, or they take what they want. And that's just it. If you're not down with it, then there'll be another one coming along here that will be. So maybe Jackie was. We'll never know, or maybe we will know. But that's a whole other discussion. But it just wasn't what it appeared to be on the public face of things. I just wonder, when you see these pictures of Bobby and JFK together, what the hell were they really talking about? How good Marilyn Monroe was, or were they talking about Kennedy and Khrushchev in Cuba? But I guess my point is, okay, that maybe, just maybe, these the sheer amount of these trysts and covering for him and everything that goes along with it, maybe the Secret Service were told to get a little lax on their procedures in Dallas, and not really having a problem with that, they followed their orders, because of what kind of a person JFK really was. it's hard to know for sure. There's even allegations in the book that Thomas Noguchi, who did Marilyn Monroe's autopsy, intentionally left out certain things and kind of fudged things a little bit on the autopsy, for certain people, and was rewarded for that, being rewarded with the position of LA County Coroner, in which position he was when he did RFK's autopsy, with whom he was very supportive and liked very much. And he wanted to do a really, really good job on his autopsy and did so. And, it's with that autopsy report that today, if somebody were to read it, it's quite plain and spelled out pretty good that, RFK was killed by 3 shots from behind. One in his chest, one in his armpit, and one to the back of the head. So, of course, Noguchi can't spread it out for us, but, Sirhan was in front. Bullets don't bend in midair, regardless of the magic bullet theory. That was an even worse magic bullet theory than the one that hit JFK, when you think about it. But majority of Americans bought it. They ate it, they swallowed it, and they moved on. And, just when you think that, hey, JFK's son is coming, JFK Jr., he's a good-looking guy, he's very magnetic, magnanimous, he's a great speaker, he's building his own fortune, starting a magazine, he's got a beautiful wife, baby on the way. Just when you think, he might be starting down the path to one day becoming president, and he's taken out. And you can believe the official story, like with all this stuff. There's official stories, and then there's what really happened. Okay? And the government thinks we're not smart enough to handle the truth. Or that if we knew the truth, that we would demand that those in power be removed. And they don't want that. Okay? They like where they are. They're in the catbird seat. They call the calls, or they make the calls, and that's where they like it. God forbid they get called to the carpet on things. And, there's even an allegation out there that Ted Kennedy wasn't even in the car at Chappaquiddick. That he was set up when he was going to run. And then he tried again. He tried to run for president, and then they brought the Chappaquiddick thing up again, and that ruined him. So, he was forever the senator, the powerless senator. Somebody thought that these Kennedys were a very, very big threat to the way business is done in this country. We're now in a semi-fascist state where the corporations make the rules, and they pay to get things going their way, or else why would we even have things like Monsanto? Why would we have million fast food restaurants on every corner serving us processed crap? They're killing us slowly. It's a slow burn, people. It's a slow burn. And slowly, the next generations get indoctrinated into this bullshit of believing in their government and the so-called, war on terror and this, that, and the other. And they just don't care enough to take a closer look at things. They're too involved in their Facebook, their Instagram, their video games, their Starbucks, their new pants, their new hairstyle, who's dating who, who's turning themselves into a woman. It's just one thing after another. It's indoctrinated crap, and you don't hear people like me, and you don't hear people like Opperman or anybody else like that on the mainstream airwaves for a reason. Okay, because people actually have to seek us out. People have to already be in the mindset that they somewhat agree with what we're saying, or else they're not going to listen. And it baffles me, man. It baffles me how somebody like a Rush Limbaugh or Jim Bohannon or people like this, Mark Levin, just have all these listeners and these loyal followers that believe everything they say. This supposed partisan crap, I just want to call in and be like, look, what are you even talking about, man? Because, I heard Jim Bohannon talking about the new, the new Patriot Act. It's called like the USA Freedom Act, where they want to repeal the Patriot Act, which was found unconstitutional and unlawful. They want to change to something else called the USA Freedom Act. And they're sitting there droning on and on about how much we need this and how much it would mean to people and how much it would protect us. And you just want to say, what the hell are you thinking? It's, we have an agency to handle foreign intelligence. It's called the CIA. Okay? It's their job to protect us from foreign enemies. Foreign intelligence. They need to know everything that's going on all over the world. That's their job. Okay? When was the last time we had pure homegrown terrorism in this country? Really, really widespread homegrown terrorism in this country. And don't even say 9/11, okay? Because we can argue about that all day. It's that's not on my radar. The last thing, a little bit of terrorism that I experienced personally, because I live close to where all this stuff was happening, and I still drive by for my work a couple places where people were shot, is the Beltway sniper. Okay, and that was terrorizing. You had this crazy son of a bitch just shooting people randomly, and they couldn't find him. They couldn't find him. They didn't even know what kind of car he was in. They were looking for a white van. He's in an old beat-up Impala. They're shooting out of a hole in the trunk. It's just craziness. That was terrorizing. Okay, but it was localized terrorism. People in California could give two shits. Sure, there's the crazy son of a bitch who wants to, drive their BMW, down by the beach and start shooting people at random. But there's crazy people everywhere. You can't prevent it no matter how much intelligence you have. There's always going to be crazy people doing crazy, unpredictable shit. There just is. And we can't do nothing about it. Okay? Just hope you're not in it. That's about it. Be self-aware. I think, they don't trust us as, mature human beings to, when we honestly see something wrong, something that maybe might not be above board, to give them a call and say, hey, you might want to look at this guy. He just doesn't seem right. This is what he's been doing. Blah, 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 blah. Instead they want to have a database of everybody in the United States. All of our phone calls, all of our texts, all of our emails, all of our conversations. I'm sure, like I said in the last one, I'm sure they follow us around on their cameras with their license plate reader and facial recognition technology. These smart passes, easy passes, they know everywhere we go, with our credit card records, they know everything we go, everywhere we go, everything we do, everything we buy. They know, because you dummy, you think you're going to save a couple cents at the supermarket, okay? And you sign up for their bonus card or whatever it is, your MVP card, and you fill out the paperwork, and then somewhere there's a big database of everything you've ever bought, what day you bought it. Now they know everything your family eats, how often you eat, what you eat. Stuff they don't need to know, When I bought a pair of pants at Belk, they don't need to know this. When I went and bought a pair of shoes at Kohl's, they don't need to know this. When I went and got a flat screen TV at Best Buy, they don't need to know this, but they know it. They could piece anybody's life out there together within probably an hour. I mean, a good portion of your life, who you are, what you do, your daily routine, all that stuff. Who you talk to, how long you're on the internet, what you look up on the internet, all this stuff they know. They do. They know it. And somewhere in some giant facility with air conditioners running everywhere and servers everywhere and lights popping everywhere, all of our information sits for perpetuity until they need it, until they want to get in there. Okay? When's the last time that the government has thwarted an actual terrorist threat from inside the United States? I'm still waiting on your answer. Still waiting on your answer. Oh, never? Ha. Yes, you, sir, there. You got the correct answer. Never. 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 Okay, the government made these fusion centers, which supposedly collated like state, local, and jurisdictional and federal police, where they have, these fusion centers set up in various states to make investigating supposed terrorist activity or terrorist threats easier. You know how many viable threats they found in the 4 years they were doing this? Zero. Okay? DeAndre going down to the corner and shooting Tony, that's not terrorism. That's life. Okay? You can't prevent all crime, or we're going to be in somewhere like the Minority Report. It's not like that. We don't want it like that. At least I don't. And, I don't want them to have my personal information. I'm sure I'm on a list somewhere for what I do and what I believe, and so be it. Just makes me a target for whatever they want to do in the future. But anyway, that's where we are now. Okay. But the dark side of Camelot, we like to villainize LBJ for his womanizing and all these other people, Bill Clinton, and God knows what Ronald Reagan was doing, and Nixon out there at the, what is that place out there near San Francisco? I don't know. It's a really high exclusive camp, not the Bilderberg Group. I don't know. High-ranking people, famous people meet out there and sacrifice animals or something. I don't know what they do out there, and have sex and whatever they do. So yeah, there was a darker side to Camelot, but we all have our dark sides, and some are public and some are not. And maybe, just maybe, a lot of these guys in the Secret Service and his immediate protection crew weren't real keen on what he was doing to Jackie and the kids. Just a possible motivation. Of course, I don't know for sure, but it makes sense to me. And another thing I want to bring up, because there's a lot of common threads throughout all this stuff in the 60s, what was going on in Laurel Canyon and the Process Church and Charles Manson and L.A. and just all kinds of craziness. I mean, you can tie these common threads together through all this stuff, the hippie peace, love and drugs movements of the 60s and, the Beatles, and you could really take this far if you wanted to. Which brings me to this point. People, fellow researcher Dave McGowan, okay, who you might have heard of before. He does a lot of interviews about how the moon landings were faked, the Boston bombing, and all kinds of other research. His big book is Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and what was really going on inside Laurel Canyon with the Manson murders and things of this nature, and the weird scene that was, going on in Laurel Canyon with drugs and, musicians in there. And just, he's a great researcher. And he's an old school dude. He's got one of these old websites called Dave's Web at, I don't know, at CompuServe or something like that. I don't know. But he's very, very, come to find out, he's very, very sick. He has like stage 4 cancer. And it really, really came on him quick, out of the blue. And, he's been going through some hard times and trying to fight his way through this. So if you could, just take a moment, say a prayer, send him some love and light, and, keep him in your thoughts and hope for a speedy recovery, because he's a truth seeker. And whether you'll agree with his findings or not, it shouldn't matter. We're talking about a man's life here, a researcher, somebody who's dedicated their life to finding the truth. So please, 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 pray for Dave. Keep him in your thoughts and prayers. And I just wanted to say that because I have a lot of respect for him. I've been listening to him and reading his stuff for a long, long time now. And a lot of it is really, really good. So, Dave, speedy, quick recovery, buddy. And I'll try to find a link to his PayPal if you'd like to help him out. Of course, he's one of those people that, like a lot of us, we don't have great insurance or any insurance. And you know how expensive it is for chemotherapy and to get the right treatment. He's just a regular dude. He's got a 9-to-5 job. He does this stuff in his spare time. And so if any little bit helps, if you could, send him a couple bucks, we greatly appreciate it. Getting through these tough times. Hopefully he'll pull on through and be around. And with a quick onset of this stuff, whatever it is he's got, it's called little cell. I can't remember the exact medical term of it, but it's a very aggressive form of cancer. But just like 4 months ago, everything was normal. His white blood cell, was normal when he went in for blood work. Everything was normal. Everything was normal. And then all of a sudden, 4 months later, he has, trouble breathing. He goes in and they give him 6 months to live. So, God damn, that's hard. It may be hard for anybody. So if you can find it in your heart to help a brother out, a fellow researcher, I'm going to try to find that link for you, put it up, send him a couple bucks, try to help him out. He'd be a good guy to have around a little bit longer. It's not his time to go yet. So thank you for listening to that, people. And just to summate this darker side of Camelot, I know people, they don't want to hear about UFOs and aliens and Roswell, and they don't want to hear about, the Kennedys being murderers and the womanizing and the drug use. But, it happened. Was he a great president? Yeah. Could he have been a greater president? Probably. If they would have let him. He didn't have big company business in mind. It wasn't in JFK to make richer people richer, or to make rich people richer. He didn't care who he pissed off. He wasn't getting good intelligence from the CIA, so he fired Alan Dulles and threatened to end the CIA, period. He was working on building up the DIA. And make it a more of a military thing than a civilian entity. And of course, we all know how that worked out. So, who knows? Everybody wants to debate about who killed Kennedy or why they wanted him dead. When it comes to finding out what exactly they were doing, it makes it that much harder. Because everybody wants to have this pretty picture of these Camelot, and Jackie, and how pretty she was, and her stylish clothes, and her adorable kids, playing under the desk, and this, that, and the other, sailing in Hyannisport on the sailboat, and this fairy tale life, But in the meantime, JFK's banging his secretary, he's banging movie stars, he's banging German spies, married women, didn't matter. Secretaries, didn't matter. 19-year-olds, didn't matter. He was getting his. And all Jackie had to do was, everybody was surprised at how strong she was. Well, I'm sure she had a lot of practice putting on that fake smile for everything that she had to endure, which she might have been a willing participant in. A lot of people agree to do things for various reasons, Is the prospect of being the First Lady of the United States one of them? Or did she truly, truly love Jack Kennedy? And was just, because she had to know. She had to know what he was doing. You can't be president of the United States and just disappear. Okay? It just doesn't work like that. So, it is what it is. Was she happy? Was she not happy? I don't know. Was the Secret Service, did they think highly of Jack? Probably not. Were they excited about the prospect of having to give their life for this scumbag? In their eyes, I'm not calling him a scumbag. I'm just saying, you got to put yourself in other people's shoes sometimes. Would you be excited if you were a Secret Service agent to take a bullet for this womanizing dude that has this beautiful family at home? I probably wouldn't be. That's me. It's just a job. There's other jobs. People left. It wasn't like people in the Secret Service back then were making millions of dollars. So anyway, I reckon that's it. I reckon this son of a bitch is in the can. Beamed up to the satellite, down directly to your ears, people. This is your boy Rob Clark on the Lone Gunman Podcast, episode number 64, The Darker Side of Camelot. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you soon.